I want to get a little deeper into acting. So instead of just playing and doing a lot of improv and that sort of thing, I want to get into more classical training of actors, getting deeper. What can we do that's deeper? It's more than memorizing lines and walking around on the stage, right? So, Ian McKellen, Gandalf, if you're Lord of the Rings fans. Yes, okay. So he's classically trained, and he's Sir now. He was knighted by the Queen before she died, so he's Sir Ian McKellen. But anyway, they asked him about acting, and I like this quote. So he said, "It's not the actor's responsibility to tell the audience what to think or how to respond. We just have to lift the characters off the page as best we can, and it turns out to be a slice of life." Well, I got to read that again. Think about what he's saying. It's not the actor's responsibility to tell the audience what to think or how to respond. We just have to lift the characters off the page as best we can. It turns out to be a slice of life. Okay. With classical training, there's a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of classical playwrights, and you just delve into that text. And it's like a dramaturg thing where every single line, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And so it's really honoring the playwright. Even if it's a comedy, that playwright got published. A lot of playwrights don't, right? So what made the publisher say, yeah, we're going to publish this play, right? Then you have to think about that. And there's something in it, some reason that somebody responded to it. So to be honest with that playwright, it's not about you. It's not about saying, well, I'm going to act this way and I'm going to, do this physical stuff. Look at the text, right? So we're just poring over that text, and then we're seeing what is it the character, what kind of character is supposed to be here? What does the playwright want instead of what I want to do? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first thing is, if you look at the actor's workshop, your syllabus, it talks about reading the script. Even if you have 5 lines in the play, read the script, read the whole thing, know what it is, and then read it again. Now, sometimes when people read the script, they're just looking at their lines, and they're just looking at their scenes. But you really have to say, what purpose does my character have in relation to the plot and the theme and another character, So you're kind of analyzing that. It's not just about you, it's about how you fit. Acting is an ensemble, right? It's not a solo piece. So, okay. We're going to do an exercise here when you look at Roman numeral 2 here, building the character, internal analysis. And we're looking at different facets of the character. So, first one is intellectual component. So that's kind of what your character thinks about things and people. If I was to ask you with A Christmas Carol, what does Scrooge think about people in general? What would you say?
Not much.
Not much. What else about?
He only thinks of himself.
Yeah, right. So it's like, yeah, people are annoying, right? People are annoying. He doesn't trust any of them, and he thinks they're pretty annoying. Yeah. So then you think about what choices would my character make if I'm just using logic, if I'm just thinking. And some choices we know in life we make logically, not emotionally, right? Okay? So then you're going to emotional. Now you're going, what does my character feel about the other characters? Who do I like? Who do I not like? What situations might make me respond emotionally instead of logically? So you start thinking about that. And the last one is spiritual component. What's your character's moral code? I know not a lot of you saw 4 Old Broads, but for the ones who did, my character Beatrice slept around a lot. Her moral code was love the one you're with, right? But her best friend was the opposite. She was like, oh my gosh, you're a tramp for doing that, So you kind of think about that, what does your character think would be okay and what not? So you have all these components you're thinking of. And now, we're going to do an inner monologue. It's called an inner monologue. And it's a really interesting thing because what your lines are saying is not necessarily what your characters think. You're reading the line, but then you're going to write in what the thoughts are for the two people that the scene is about.
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Just move on, I beg you. You don't have to. In fact, please don't.
I can get by with saying nothing. I like this.
As you're reading your lines, the problem sometimes with, you're memorizing lines and you've read them so many times and they just stop meaning anything anymore, But if you play with the inner thoughts, then you have something to keep you going, and your lines just sound more interesting. So that's anyway, one technique. All right, let's kind of move on here to the vocal delivery. So first thing would be volume. Sometimes we know this, people hard of hearing that say, I couldn't hear the actors, right? And so, yeah, you're going to have people like that in the audience, so you really are going to have to be loud enough, yeah. But again, think about varying the volume. There are times when, if you're trying to be sensitive with your character, and you're talking like this, so you'll be loud enough, it just doesn't work really well, So you got to be heard, but you also have to think, how can I vary the volume instead of, doing it the same way. Okay, next one is articulation or diction, right? So the audience needs to understand what you're saying, but think about your character overall. Any Harry Potter fans out here? Harry Potter? Yeah, okay. So Professor Snape speaks like this. The word endings always come out, right? Okay, so some characters might do that, speak like that. And then Sound of Music, fans out here? Sound of Music, okay. So Christopher Plummer, awesome. Anyway, he's, you can understand what he's saying, good diction, but also he sounds more natural. Like, you really kind of believe him. And he's an expert at varying just the pace and the volume, and, he's really good at that. So, okay, that brings us to our diction exercises. When you're talking in normal life, a lot of people just, we're lazy talkers, right? We kind of right? So before I go on stage, I always do these voice and diction things, and just get my teeth and jaw and everything going, so that when I come on stage, I'm not kind of going blah, blah, blah with my lines, So here we go, everybody. Let's try this first one. Here we go. I'm going to count to 3, and then we'll say it. 1, 2, 3.
Betty bought a bit of butter, but she found the butter bitter.
Pretty good, pretty good. Now, the next thing to do with these things, which you won't do now, but practice saying them faster. And use the same one over and over again, and see how fast you can do it. Again, we won't do that now, but it's something to play with at home. It's kind of fun. Also, breath-wise, since you need more air to get that volume, you don't want it to come up here, right? If you're trying to talk more volume up here, then you get laryngitis, you just can't, you lose your voice, right? So the breathing part is important. And if you're saying these fast, multiple times, and you're trying to do it on one breath, that's good practice. And the breath should be from here and not up here. So I'd like you to just put your hands around your rib cage, right where your diaphragm is, yeah? And here's what I want you to do is I want you to breathe, have your stomach go out when we breathe out, and then we'll exhale when we breathe it in, like that. And we're making a sound through our mouth, okay? So we're going to do it slowly. Here we go. So breathe out. In, sorry. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? And we'll try it again. Again, it shouldn't be up here. It should be here. Yeah, so that's a good exercise. Another one is imagine that you're hit in the stomach. And you kind of go, oh, like that, right? Oh. And that's the sound, if it comes from here, instead of like that, come like that, And if you keep pressing on your stomach, do the like that, you're going to get more there. All right, so let's try the again. Pretend you're getting hit. Okay, breathe in again. And we're going. Breathe in again. Okay, and then you can try more of a kind of thing. And the more you can do it through your diaphragm, the better, because then you're getting that power, and so you have that volume on stage, and you're not pushing it, you're not hurting your vocal cords. Okay. There's another diction exercise that's kind of fun, and I call it the EIOs. And this is something I do if I'm directing a play, and I do a warm-up before we start. And it goes, E-I, it's like a waltz. E-I-O, 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 and then I-O, E-I-O, E-I-O, E, and then O, E-I-O, E-I-O, E-I. Okay, we're going to try that. So again, it's E-I-O, 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 and then it's I-O-E, 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 and then it's O-E-I, O-E-I, O-E-I. Okay, and we try to do it in one breath. Okay, so here we go. Breath in. And
E-I-O, 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 I-O, E-I-O, E-I-O, E-O-I-O, E-I-O, E-I.
Now, some of you were kind of E-I-O. I want to really see E-I, I want to see the jaw working here. So, when you think about the pace, how slow or how fast does your character talk? So I put, anybody seen the Disney version of Winnie the Pooh? Anybody? Confess? Okay, all right. So we know that Rabbit always speaks so fast, like that. He's speaking like that. But Eeyore is like, nobody loves me, nobody cares, like that. So think of pace-wise, overall, is there a fast talker or a slow talker for your character? You don't want to go too fast so that the audience doesn't know what you're saying, right? But anyway, but then again, you're still going to do a variety to make it interesting instead of the same pace, okay? So that's that one. Then we get to D, which is tone. Think of the tone of your vocal character here. So, is it a really grating tone? How many think, I show of hands here, how many on your cell phone GPS, when Siri talks to you about directions, you go, oh, it's just, this grating voice. Oh, I hate that. And so I was mentioning that, and my nephew said, well, you can have any voice you want to for Siri. And I said, really? I didn't know that. So he said, yeah, so what do you want? And I said, an Australian guy. And so he said, okay. So he programs that in, And now I have, Ted Wellington, and it's very soothing and it's very nice. And yeah, so anyway, something to think about. Some characters talk about nasal, but careful with the nasal voice, because you have to keep that the whole way through, because if you drop it, they notice, right? It's a little tricky. All right, some people have a very soothing kind of voice too, very calming. You have to think about that. And sultry, you know what sultry means? Sexy, right? Sultry voice. Okay, let's look at number 4, physical delivery. Alrighty. When we're looking at physical delivery, you have to, again, think about the energy state of your character. So, lethargic, again, is your character doing as little as possible to get by? Are they just kind of, hanging out and not very energetic? Be careful about this one, though, because it could bore your audience. Yeah. So you definitely have to be a little careful with that one. Another one would be kind of laid back. Is sort of the same, but more laid back. People can be wide awake more, right? But then still relaxed. Efficient. Again, intelligence. You're running. It's your brain that's working it, but you just don't have a lot of emotion or empathy or sympathy for people. Yep. Okay. Alert. Again, ready for action and in control. That's your character alert. Passionate. Passionate people are very excited about any encounter with people and, that sort of thing, emotional. And then hysterical. So millions of ideas, but no wisdom. I mean, we're talking kind of a crazy time there. Okay. So anyway, again, you're looking at these characters or these energy states and figuring out which one is best for you. So when you're creating the character, again, review is you're looking at the text. You're not saying, what do I want to do with the character? You're saying, what does the author see? How does the author see the character? How does the playwright see the character? And then, once you've done that, once you get that, then you start saying, here's the voice I'm going to do. Here's the walk I'm going to do. Here's the energy state. And you start building it. But it's not all about you. It's about what the playwright thinks, and you're being true to what that playwright wants to do. Okay? So that's kind of something. Again, when choosing a state for your character, remember that it's a general state and that sometimes your character might respond emotionally rather than intellectually, you know, so you have to kind of look at that too. Okay, next thing we get into is gestures. How many people feel, you know, kind of a little uncomfortable with their bodies, what to do with my body and hands? Anybody? Yeah? Okay. It's tricky, isn't it, sometimes? Because you want to look natural, but it's like, what do I do with my hands, you know? I have a quote from Hamlet here, Shakespeare's Hamlet, and he's talking to a group of actors, and he says, do not saw the air too much with your hand. Suit the action to the word to the action. In other words, when you're gesturing, when you're using your hands, you're thinking, you know, what is the meaning of this line? And so what should my gestures be doing? You know, instead of just randomly flinging your arms around like I'm doing. Okay. All right. C, I really got to talk about this one, making use of props. Has anyone seen 9 to 5, the musical? Okay. So, okay, there you go. So I was in a production of 9 to 5 for Great Theater, and my character was Roz. And if you saw the movie 9 to 5, Roz is the snitch. She's the one that tells on everybody all the time, right? Yes, she's the snitch. Anyway, she has the hots for the boss. She loves, you know, but he's married and he's interested in another secretary, and she's kind of dumpy and he's not interested in her at all. But there is a scene where she starts her solo number. And so if the boss's desk is here, what he's done with the other secretary, he likes to, she's hot, she's Dolly Parton, played that, right, in the movie. So he kind of makes his pencils fall down because he likes to watch her bend down and pick them up because then he can see her breasts, right? Anyway, so she refused to pick them up. She's like, you know, she leaves and whatever. And so Roz, you know, is just, she'll pick them up, you know, she'll do anything, right? And so he's going, oh, you know, pick these up, and then he leaves. So she's picking up the pencils, and then she's singing her song about her dreams about the boss. She and the boss getting together. And the choreographer for that production said he knew that I had choreographed a lot of stuff, and so he said, you know, for your solo number, just do what you want to do, and then there's the second part of it, I'll choreograph your backup dancers that come in the second part. But the first part is just me in the song. So I'm like, what am I going to do with my hands during this song? And then it came to me. I pick up first the stuff, but then I could keep a pen in my hand that the boss had touched. You know, so then I'm like, oh, his prints are on this pen, you know. And so I was starting the song with that pen. Then the lyrics talked about fighting off other women who might be interested in the boss. So then I take the pen and I said I can use it as a magic wand, and there it is, you know. And then I can use it as a microphone when I'm kind of jamming, you know. And then at the very end, I sing a last note, and then there's a couple more beats from the pit, and then I put the pen in my mouth like a rose in my teeth, you know, the last little pose. And it worked really well. So for the beginning, too, when I wasn't singing, I used a clipboard, because I thought Roz is taking notes, dissing on people. Okay, she's not doing her work. Okay, I write that down. Talk to the boss. She's, you know, like that. So I thought, if I have that clipboard every scene and I'm writing, you know, that'll work well. So if there's a way that you can think about that, if you're in a play and you go, boy, you know, I could use this prop. You know, that would help me a lot to have something to do with my hands and just make it easier. So, and you can suggest stuff like that to directors too. You know, they're usually cool with that sort of thing, you know. So, yeah, so try that with props. I think it would make it easier. Then, let's see. Let's go to number 5 here. So during rehearsals, now we've gotten into rehearsals. We've read the script, you know, we kind of analyzed some stuff, and now we're rehearsing. And like I said, give 100%. It's just selfish not to. If you say, oh, I don't want to go to rehearsal again, it's so boring, well, then you're being selfish. That's my thoughts. Because it is an ensemble thing, and you have to be your best, you know, so that other people can grow. I acted once in a dinner theater where we were paid, which is lovely, but there was an actor that I acted with, and he said, you know, he wasn't giving 100%. And one rehearsal he said, yeah, you know, I guess I don't give 100% till we get an audience. And I thought, well, that's not, first of all, you're getting paid, but second, that's not fair, you know, to anybody else. Because the fun part of rehearsal is when you're building that, you know, with other characters, when you're interacting, and if you're giving 100% and they are too, you know, then you can build that scene and that character, and it's so exciting and so much fun, you know. But if you're not, then it's not fair. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. Okay. All right. Next, with be aware of the subtext. We're talking about subtext in the scene. So ask yourself, see, what's happened up to this moment? All right. Sometimes what I've seen in a play is we know that this particular character has just received some really awful news, you know, that would be emotional. And so, you know, but they come on stage like this, you know, and then say, oh, I'm so upset. You know, but it's like, why did you just saunter in then, you know? So anytime you're off stage and you think, the next scene I come on, what has happened during that time, you know, when I've been off, when my character's been somewhere, you know? And then come in fast if something big has happened, or, you know, or, I mean, think about that, you know, what's happened before that? What physical activity has my character been doing? You know, have you been jogging? Are you coming in out of breath? You know, think about that. And then how have other characters affected my character's mood? So if something happened off stage and these characters are saying what's happened to your character, and you're mad at somebody that's on the stage, you know? And so you come in, and when you see them, you're kind of like, yeah, you really ticked me off here, you know? So you're responding to that, instead of just kind of saying lines, whatever lines are yours. All right? And then, what does my character want? In every scene, your character wants something. What is it? You know, what is it they want? Think about that, you know. Okay, next one. If a character or characters are entering from off stage, and we kind of talked about this, does the character expect to find these people in the room, whoever's in the room, or not? If not, then, you know, when you enter, then you're going to come in and kind of go, whoa, you know, I expect the person to be there. And sometimes you kind of stop, right? So, you know, just kind of think about that. And, again, what does my character want? And then what does the character feel about the environment they're in? Some people would not be very comfortable in a PE class. So if a PE, you know, class is on stage or whatever, and you're coming in and you're like, you know, I don't even want to be here, you know. So respond to your surroundings, what's going on with that. Okay. Now, this next part, we are going to do, again, some group work here. This one has to do with your lines. So, my big thing that I notice is, so if I'm saying something, Matt, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So if I'm saying something to Matt, and he looks blank, and then says his next line, he's not really reacting first to what I just said, you know? And I see that a lot in plays, I really do, where, you know, people, it's like, oh, now here's my next line. Yeah, but what did that person just say to you? You know, how can I get a facial reaction first to that, and then say your line, you know? What we're gonna do is, we're gonna put our finger on our lines, so we can kind of keep it going. But this is an exercise in reacting to what the person has said to you, right? So, instead of looking back down at what my next line is, I'm going to just keep looking at him until he said his line. And then I'll look down at mine, just for a minute, take a beat, take a pause, and then look at him. In the meantime, he's going to keep looking at me, not his line. But he's going to have his finger kind of going down so that when he looks at it, he gets the right line.
Very nice work.
Oh, thank you. Really?
Yes.
Do you want me to do the second side?
No, that won't be necessary.
I memorized it.
If you'd like, go ahead.
It was really slow, wasn't it? But what happened is, by looking at his face, I could react to what he was doing instead of just looking at what's my next line. All right. Make the character believable. This last one we did was kind of a practice in that. Again, reacting, because that's real life. You know, you react to what somebody says before you say anything else. Yeah. So make it believable. People also ask about comedy. Isn't comedy different than drama when it comes to acting? Well, yes and no. And I have a quote here by Jack Lemmon, who is in The Odd Couple and Grumpy Old Men. He's been in a lot of comedies. And somebody said to him, you know, how do you play comedy? And I like this quote. He said, if the audience thinks that the actor thinks he's funny, he's dead. Let's look at that again. If the audience thinks that the actor thinks he's funny, he's dead. Right? He's not funny. I had an actor I worked with before when I was directing that kind of made me crazy because he was always, you know, just overdoing, you know, and mugging and you know, just saying, oh, you know, and it was fakey. It just looked fakey. The funniest stuff happens when it's just coming from within and something just happens in the rehearsal. And, you know, the audience laughs and you go, ha, wow, okay, you know, but you didn't expect it necessarily because you weren't necessarily planning for it. Again, you know, you can be really funny, yeah, and that's what he was arguing with me. He said, well, aren't I supposed to be funny? And I said, you have to we're going to go back to Ian McKellen, let the audience decide, right, if you're funny. You play the character true to life, and then they can decide if it's funny. You don't tell them what to think. Again, go back to that quote, right? So, careful about overdoing in comedies. Careful about that because if you're in rehearsal and you're in the moment and all of a sudden a line comes out differently or something happens because you're in the moment, that can be funny, you know, and then you'll be surprised. Same thing with anger, playing anger on stage. Sometimes I don't believe it. You know, somebody's supposed to be mad and I'm going, you know, I don't believe that. So again, it's coming from within the character. There was a Neil Simon play I was in once where I was really supposed to be angry about something, and I had a magazine that I was looking through that I was, you know, flipping like that because I was mad. And when I straightened it out, it ripped apart the whole spine. And it was a small theater, and someone was in the first row, and they just, you know, it was like, yikes. You know, but again, I was angry. You know, I mean, they could say it, they could see it. It wasn't just me faking it and saying, oh, now I'm angry, my character. No, you know, it just happened. And things like that. When you're in the moment, these spontaneous things will just happen, and they'll be really funny, you know? So, okay, so that's important. Let's see, here's another thing, E, we're talking about E here. Avoid calling attention to your character if another is the focus at that point in time. This is what's called, there's a term for this that you may have heard, which is scene stealing.
Yeah.
Scene stealing. So what can happen is, you know, if somebody is, you know, the focus are on these two people saying a line, right? And I'm over here, and I don't have a line at that point, but I'm kind of going, you know, I'm calling attention to myself, and I'm getting a laugh, but these people have the lines. Don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. You know, you're not the center of the universe, right? So it's like, who has the lines at this point? That's what you want to know, yeah.
How do you counter that with, like, you don't want to just stand there, if you're still, like, on the stage, you don't want to just stand there playing face, not reacting, so how do you do reacting without seeing
And that's a good question. And actually, what I would say is do less physical stuff and more facial stuff. Because that way, you're not calling a lot of attention to your body, but if somebody kind of scans and looks at your face, they can tell. So think about that, who has the important part at this point in time? And then just back off. You want to react, you don't want to just go, and stand there. But, so facially you can do something, but then think of ways to give them the attention that they need. Another reason for that is sometimes in comedies there are plot points that are important. There's information, new information, as things keep changing. And if somebody's looking at somebody laughing or crazy, and getting attention, they're going to miss something. And then all of a sudden they're going to be really confused. It's like, wait, what? Memorization. Let's talk about memorization, all right? Sometimes you get, it's not just one line and then the next person line. Sometimes you get a clump of lines. I know, first act of Four Little Broads, someone would have a line and then I'd have 6 sentences. I'd have these big clumps of lines. So what do you do with that? Here's a mistake, is if you have a clump of lines, don't just rattle through it. Sometimes people are going, oh my gosh, I'm going to make a mistake because I got this little mini monologue here going on. And so I'm just going to say it really fast, get over it. So I don't have to think about it anymore. Don't do that. The best thing is to slow down. Because then you're thinking, right? And I'm going to give you an example. No one told you to do that? Insult your girlfriend? Tell her she looks like an old tea bag? Well, some women do respond awfully well to that sort of treatment. They enjoy tremendously being told they look a mess. I've never met one that does, mind you, but they probably do exist. In books, by men. But then there are some women who enjoy being thrown into a canal. One just doesn't bump into them every day, not even in this family. Okay, so with that clump of lines, did you notice anything about the delivery? How about the pace?
You put things together that made sense to me. And then you went on to the next thought. That made sense.
Okay.
Like pausing in the right place.
Right. Otherwise I wouldn't have understood all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. First thing you'll notice is I wrote an emotion, right? Which is surprise, because she's like, what? This is what you do to a woman, you insult them? Like what? So later on, reflective. Right? Reflective, she's kind of thinking about, well, I don't know, are some women like that? I don't know. You notice too that I have these slashes. What are they there for?
Pauses.
Yeah. Remember to breathe, and that's the deal. And if you have this monologue, a clump of lines, and you just put slashes after each period and punctuation mark, then you remember to not just run on and have these run-on sentences. Also, it makes you stop and think, do I have the same emotion in the next sentence or not? Okay? You gotta think about that. The double railroad tracks mean big pause. Yeah, so a really big pause as you're thinking. And that's the thing, in natural life, sometimes you're not just talking all the time, you're thinking. You stop for a minute and go, oh, okay, well, I didn't think about that, So again, back to Ian McClellan, slice of life, right? It's gotta be natural. And that's, some of this stuff, it doesn't. So the other thing, besides emotion, is pace. Notice I put faster here. We talked earlier about pace. Vary it so that maybe your character is a fast talker, but not all the way through. There are times when you want to slow it down, sometimes when you go faster. Just play with it a little bit, So, yeah, any other comments about this? Or make sense to you? Yeah, because again, I think with memorization, people are so just, oh, I got this clump of lines and I have to get through it. Memorizing, a technique I do with clumps of lines is I will type them up, and every time there's a new sentence, I'll I'll align it, I'll left align it, left. So that, now, other people have had to memorize lines. Do you have techniques that you have found that works for you? Like, what do you do when you memorize lines?
So one of the things that I do when I have to memorize lines is I will read the first line that I start at. Similarly, I'll make note where other people have things to say, but I'll read the first line, get that memorized, move on to the second one, and then I'll keep doing those in order until I get them down. And I know another one that I've done in the past works really well if you have the group of people that you're going to be doing lines with. You actually start at the end of the scene and work your way forward. And then when you work your way forward and get to the beginning, then you do the scene through.
That's interesting. Yeah, okay. Any other ideas for messaging?
Kind of what I've done is, at first, especially starting out, you don't really know it, you just read through the scene and just get the feel of the scene. I always start at the person before me's line, so I can make sure, like, listening for that line
Right.
when I come in. Then kind of read through it, then I try to start to, like, cover my line and read their line before it and try to say it. And then I'll move on to, hopefully if I have somebody to help me, they'll read the people's lines and I won't have my book. And then, even though I may not fully know it, I'll try to start to say it and it can give me hints and things. But then I'll eventually just start doing it and like saying that line over and over again until I've got it pretty much down, and then I'll move on to the next one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, everybody has to find what works today. Well, are there any last questions that you have for me?
When did you start acting?
First grade.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm from Minneapolis. My dad was a theater director. So, yeah. So anytime they needed a kid to play, ta-da, you know. Yeah. So yeah, been a while.
What's your favorite thing to play? Like, do you like musicals, comedies, or what is like your favorite thing?
Well, you know, I really like small cast shows best at this point in my life. I just do. It's less chaotic downstairs in the green room with costuming and, you know, it's kind of nuts. But yeah, small cast, also you get to know the people better. It's like, you know.
Have you ever acted in like a movie?
Yes, a short one, but it's something that was an independent film, independently made. It was a very short film, and yeah. But that it's a whole different ballgame. I don't like it. I don't like film acting at all because, and I took actually a class in acting for the camera or TV or whatever. But I don't like it when cameras are zooming near my face, you know, and things like that. I'm just like, oh, get out of here, you know, because again, I like to react to actors, you know. I don't like to have these things around me about it. You got a question?
Do you have a favorite role?
Oh, wow, let's see. I like Beatrice an awful lot. And this is a weird thing too when it comes to casting, is that some of the roles I played before Beatrice, and Beatrice again is the one who sleeps around and is kind of an ex-stripper or whatever. And so when I was cast, I was surprised because in great theater they cast me as Mrs. Higgins in My Fair Lady, right? And they cast me as Miss Prism in The Importance of Being Earnest. And they cast Roz, you know, the prude. I was getting these prude characters all of a sudden. And so I said to Tom when he cast me as Beatrice, I said, you know, I was kind of surprised. I was expecting Edie, that you'd give me Edie, you know, the prude, you know, again, and that sort of thing. And he said, oh no. He said, you know, I knew right away. He goes, bam, you're Beatrice. I'm like, yeah, I still got it, you know. But it's nice to play a variety of things, you know, and so it's really hard for me to say what role. But probably my favorite one was a play that nobody knows. That's Masha, Sonia, Vanya, Masha's, yeah, you know that one?
Yes.
Vanya, Masha, Sonia Spike.
Spike.
And I was Masha, you know, this film actress, and oh my gosh, that was fun to play. She's just totally rude and mean and everything, and just everything I'm not. And it's so fun to play somebody like that who's just kind of a jerk, you know. Yes, question.
What's your favorite musical?
Wow, boy, that's tough. You know, I really like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I really do. It's just so fun. It's just so fun to do. And fun to dance, too. I'm a dancer, too, so I Anything else?
Well, how do you deal with if you get a lot of rejections? And what kind of mindset do you have to do for yourself to keep going?
Yeah. Well, I think, it is tough, especially when, if a lot of people are auditioning for a particular role. First of all, I think know what kind of role you play, or you can play. Because, there are people, as a director of more than 30 years, too, when people audition for me, sometimes they're auditioning for a role that they put down, and I'm going, no way, you're nothing like that person, and that's not what you're showing me. So I think number one is, knowing what you can play. And, just if there's a play that you go, there's nothing in there, no roles for me, then maybe, you can audition if you want to for practice. But, try it in front of a mirror, maybe, and then see physically, like what you're doing in front of a mirror. What are you doing when you audition? Sometimes if you're reading from a script, I would say buy the script ahead of time and read it over and think of a role that you want to play and practice those lines a little. So because if you have a problem reading cold, some people just read cold better than others. And if you prepare a little bit, then that'll help too, I think. So maybe those things, yeah.
Have you done any stage acting or teaching of fighting scenes or anything like that?
Fight scenes are terrible. No, what I usually do is I get someone who has done stage combat before, and I bring them in, to do that kind of stuff, because it's just not easy to do. It's tough.
So it's been on my bucket list to do a play. How do I know what I can do?
Good question.
Like, do I just not check any boxes and just
Oh, you're saying,
And-
you're saying
if I'm auditioning?
yeah, and you say, I want to audition for, but you don't know what to audition for?
Right,
Which role?
right.
Ah. Well, a lot of times, like for Four Old Broads, for example, Tom had us, I read for Beatrice and Edie and Imogene, and he had us read for a variety of things.
Oh,
And that's usually for what they do, is they'll see what you can do. This is another reason why I say find a script ahead of time, because then you want to show that you can do absolutely, just on a dime, a different character for each of these three, Same thing with great theater also, with monologues. Sometimes they'll say, we want contrasting monologues. Here's a monologue, this character, here's a monologue, this character. And even though you're not the right age for it, sometimes the director wants to see two different things. And if you can practice those monologues and memorize them, and then just be totally different characters, physically, vocally, then they'll go, wow. And even if they don't cast you in that show, they'll go, gee, she just on a dime went to a different character, and that's impressive. So,
Do you have a favorite accent that
well, British, because I lived in England and studied theater in England for a year. And so I really, really got that accent, and I didn't have to work at it so hard. But when I first came, I was cast in a play right away, and I didn't have a British accent, and the rest of the cast did. So every time they said an R sound, and I'd be like, R, R, our R sounds, and they'd kind of go, look at me like, oh, I gotta learn a British accent in this play, or I'm gonna stick out like a sore thumb. But that's fun. Southern is a lot of fun too. When I was in the play Star Spangled Girl, Neil Simon, director said, she, not just Southern accent, you have to have a Georgian accent from Georgia. That's different from some other ones and whatever. So what I did is, I got a tape of Georgian, I wrote phonetically my 400 lines. I was writing vowel sounds and I was writing all this stuff for the whole script, and then it was interesting because opening night, this woman came backstage and she said to me, are you from Georgia? And I said, no, actually, I'm from here, and she said, well, you remind me of all my friends back in Georgia.
yeah.
So I felt pretty cocky that night, I tell you. Any other questions? Yeah. Well, we stayed later than I meant for you to do, but I so appreciate that you signed up, and it's been lovely working with you. Great energy, everybody, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.